Joining me now is the head coach of women's lacrosse at Kean University. She's entering her second year with the program, and it's her first time on this show. Sarah Lawshe, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Hi, thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
It's our pleasure. So let's go back to the beginning. Talk to me about how you first got into women's lacrosse and how it led you on a path towards Kean University.
Sure. So I played lacrosse growing up. I started in middle school. I went to college for lacrosse. I went to Shippensburg University, which is a D2 Pennsylvania state school. After college, I went back to grad school at Wilkes University. There I was a grad assistant coach. And then in 2019, I was elevated to head coach there at Wilkes. In 2021, I moved to New Jersey and I took the assistant coach job at Montclair State. And then in 2023, came here to Kean.
Fantastic journey. Now, like you said, you've taken part in lacrosse programs at several colleges, whether as a player, a coach, a recruiter. What separates Kean from those other schools? Is there anything that makes Kean University stand out above the rest?
I would say the level of support here at Kean is what makes us stick out. From the athletic directors to the athletic trainers, the academic support, the sport and conditioning staff, everyone works very collaboratively with myself and my athletes. So it just feels very cohesive from all fronts.
Now, this is your second year coaching with the women's lacrosse team at Kean University. What are some of the things you learned in your first year that you'll take with you into your second year?
I learned a lot of things my first year. First year is always the hardest because the athletes are learning how you coach, they're learning your communication style, you're learning about each and every athlete, what they respond best to. So first year, there's a big learning curve. I would say the number one thing I would take going into next year is understanding that athletes today are really seeking a collaborative environment from college athletics, which is different from when I was in school. So athletes want to have a say in what goes on in their college athletics experience. So as coaches, we kind of have to learn what we can have their input on and what needs to remain just strictly coaching staff.
Now, speaking of athletes, I had the privilege of interviewing Savannah Olson back in May after she won Conference Rookie of the Year. Who were some of your key players going into this season, and how different does the roster look from last year?
So Savannah Olson and a few of her other sophomore teammates are definitely our key returning players, that being Skylar Ray and Emily Schultz. Offensively, we do expect to see a lot from them. Defensively, we have returning Grace Michelli and Jen Koval. Both of those are seniors that were all conference players, so that'll be who we're looking to in the back end of the field. Since I was hired late September, a lot of my recruiting efforts from the previous years are now unfortunately at another school, so I was kind of late to the recruiting game here. But I was lucky enough to pick up a few good freshmen and 2 transfers as well. So we do have a few newcomers to the team. I would say overall it is more of a rebuilding year for us, but that is okay and that is expected because recruiting does take time.
All teams have to rebuild at some point. So talk to me about what your players do in terms of training, whether during the season or in the offseason, to try to stay a step above all the other teams.
We do strength conditioning all year round. So I myself am a strength conditioning coach. That's another job of mine. I'm a fitness instructor. So I understand how important strength training is. So we have a huge emphasis on it. We do it all year round. Other teams might take a break during season when they have games, but we still are weightlifting. We just might dial it back a bit.
Now, let me ask you this question. We've seen the beginning of a revolution in women's sports over the past year or two. The WNBA is more popular than it's ever been. The Professional Women's Hockey League just kicked off last year. Do you feel as though women's lacrosse is a part of that wave and that it continues to grow with each passing year?
Yes, actually. So just a few weeks ago, they announced that the WLL is something brand new coming out. It's a women's professional league, which is like a sister to the PLL. So that's the men's version that's already in existence. So that'll be nationally televised professional women's lacrosse games. And then in 2028, the Olympics are coming back. Women's lacrosse is in the Olympics. So that's also very exciting. I would say in today's world, social media definitely helps. A lot of the top college players, top college and professional players are creating a following. So it's putting more eyes on the sport.
It's fantastic. And I ask this question to every Kean coach I've ever interviewed. You teach them to be better athletes while they're in their uniforms. How do you teach them to be better people for the real world?
That's a good question. I like to say I do this sneakily or subliminally, so it's not so in their face. The biggest thing I do is ask them to volunteer their time. So, yes, they're busy college student athletes, they have a lot going on, but if they have any free time, I ask them to volunteer it. So, we are always putting on clinics, we're going to different events for local community organizations. So that's my big thing, just asking for volunteer work. And then another thing that I do with them is like to prepare them for the workforce. So just an example, a conversation I had with them the other day. If they need to miss practice, I want them to ask me permission to miss practice. Of course, it's going to be a yes from me, but just the act of asking for that time off is something they're going to have to do with an employer. They can't just not show up for work someday. So it's small things like that that I think will help translate to work after graduation.
It's fantastic stuff. Sarah, thanks so much for taking the time this morning, and best of luck this season.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Of course. Head over to ONNJ.com for the latest news and sports anytime.